You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
We're back broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Landscape Studios. This is Where You Live. And, of course, we're brought to you by American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency, and Extreme Exteriors. You can count on Extreme Exteriors for expert installation of exterior siding, roofing, soffit, fascia, gutters, decks, windows, and more. With their knowledge and experience, they can design the perfect solution to make your home beautiful, energy efficient, saving you maintenance and money for years to come. Give them a call at 763-441-1334 and tell them Gene and Tony sent you. Well, folks, we're going to get back with our discussion. We are happy to have on the line with us here today, Dan Greenstein, an attorney with Bernick Lifson. We're talking about A Tale of Two Doggies, where the gentleman and a wife apparently had a border collie. The association said you can only have dogs up to 25 pounds. This dog was more. They went into a battle. During this whole litigation, the dog died. Instead of it being a good thing to kind of reset things and moving forward, the guy buys another border collie. His wife leaves him. He now has even more troubles and now is claiming that he needs the dog as a reasonable accommodation for his disability. Dan, it's incredulous what people are trying to pull off nowadays.
You know, you really can't make up this stuff.
You really can't.
But, I was thinking over the break, Gene, that, some of these restrictions on pets, I get the feeling that they're really going to go away with time. Because what we're seeing is, anybody can have some kind of depression, some kind of recognized disability. And all you have to do is have a letter from a medical provider. Doesn't have to even be a doctor, but somebody in the medical field that says it would be healthy for you or good for you to have a pet or to have a dog. And homeowner associations are very limited in saying no. They really have to allow that pet as a reasonable accommodation now.
Yeah. And I agree with you. You brought up a good point in the last segment. You said, first of all, this association is probably trying to do some things with some very bad rules that they have in place.
Yeah, I think that's the case, because to start out and battle over a weight restriction for a pet does not seem to be a good use of the association's money to me. Why not change the rule and have very clear-cut rules and a fine system in place for monitoring and controlling the behavior of the pet? Yeah. And again, as we said, what you're really talking about is the owners.
The behavior of the owner, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're talking about here in this case, as soon as anybody starts saying that I need this pet for a disability, people need to realize if that comes up, more likely than not, the person's going to be able to keep that pet.
That is correct. Under our Americans with Disability Act and under the HUD federal guidelines, as well as the some of the other statutes governing living in associations, any recognized disability, once it's shown you have a recognized disability, you're entitled to a reasonable accommodation, and that's been found to mean you can have a companion animal.
Yeah, and that companion animal even is so broad. I mean, it seems like I've seen and heard stories now where that can be a small miniature pony. It can be considered a snake as a comfort pet.
I don't doubt it. I know it's been found to be little parakeets.
Yeah.
So I suppose any type of animal that provides some measure of comfort to someone is probably going to be allowed.
Yeah.
Now, your example of a miniature horse or pony, I'm picturing it walking down the hall of a condominium building in town. I'm just wondering how that would work.
Yeah. Oh, but there's someone out there. I know who has tried that. I wish I could remember the story. We commented on it a few months back, but more people will probably try something like that. And when people are doing this, I think people are just more than anything else are just trying to say, I'm going to just prove to you that I'm going to get my way.
Well, I think there's a lot of that in CIC living in this economy. The lack of power and control people have in their daily lives tends to bring it out more in their association life because they've had enough. They have trouble with their job or trouble with their finances, and they'll be damned to allow their neighbors on a volunteer board to have any control over them.
I think that is a very astute observation, Dan, and that goes both ways, not only for the homeowners but for board members too. People a lot of times don't seem like they have a lot of control in their life, but now here they see a smaller situation where they might be able to show some control, be able to hang on to that, and they do so in a desperate way.
And what's really unfortunate is when someone is feeling that way and they get elected to the board.
Yeah.
And now they have a little bit of power, and they may not clearly understand that the role of the board member is to act in the best interests of everyone.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
right.
I'm sure many of your listeners have run up against a board member that seems to be, for lack of a better word, on a power trip and is doing things the way they want to do despite kind of overwhelming sometimes disagreement with what they're doing.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. It's good to have rules and regulations. It's important. But talk about this notion. Can a board ever get to a point where they come up with the perfect set of rules and regulations and no one and nothing will ever be bothered again?
Well, I think as long as there's human beings living in the association, that is not going to happen. I really view the rules and regulations of an association as kind of a work in progress because they can easily be revised or changed by a majority vote of the board of directors. I don't think they're ever really set and completed for all time. I think the purpose of the rules and allowing the board to change the rules without an owner vote is to allow the association to adapt to new changes.
Yeah.
New people living there, new rules, new changes, and I don't think it's ever going to be set in stone what your rules are.
Right. Perfect example would be vehicle parking rules. The fact is we live in a society now where people have more than one vehicle, and if you got a single car garage and a small driveway, you're going to have issues, especially if you have a family there. You can have 2-3 cars.
And then if you have a guest or two come over for an evening or a holiday, you may run into some real problems.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like to see parking rules or restrictions put into the declaration, because then it's a very lengthy and difficult process to change them.
Yeah.
If they're in the rules and times change, the board has the discretion to make those changes.
Yeah. Parking and pets, the two big issues.
Parking and pets.
Yeah. Lastly, wanted to just have you comment on the idea of the association. They're saying, okay, now we've got a rule in place, in this case a weight restriction. Now the idea is we can fine everybody into compliance, and that really doesn't work at all.
Well, it doesn't. And as we all know, many people view their pets like their children.
Yeah.
And they'd rather fight for 2 years and spend money than to somehow have to have their child move out of their unit. And, really what it comes down to is each community has to take a look at, their association, decide what kind of place they want it to be, and hopefully formulate rules through their board of directors that reflect that community standard.
Yeah.
And, I think that, again, if you're going to allow pets at all, and there are some associations that say absolutely no pets.
Yep.
But if there's a companion animal, that would be, the a rare situation. They wouldn't have a lot of pets in their building. But there's other associations that want to allow pets, and if you're going to allow pets, then allow them, and just have good rules on how they have to be kept and controlled and cleaned up after.
Yep, and once again, it's really not about the pets as much as it is about the homeowner.
Person. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thanks so much for taking some time to be on the show with us today.
My pleasure.
Folks, that is attorney Dan Greenstein with Bernick Lifson. Always great to have him weigh in on any story that we're looking at. Well, hey, don't go away. We've got to take a break right now, but when we come back, we've got one last segment on a story I think you'll be very interested in. You're listening to Where You Live on AM 1280, The Patriot.